Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast. Haven't said that in a while. I am Josh on the West Coast. That is Nate. He is on the East Coast. And it's definitely different in terms of weather where we're both at. But either way, we're ready to talk hoop, man, as it's within a week from when we're recording this until the NBA season is going to officially kick off in the regular season there. We're going to be bringing you here some regular season win over and under bets that we're making for the NBA futures this season. Also going to have another video up for you guys with awards and a few other futures bets, including some division stuff. Really just free for all, whatever we like, our best bets of the futures that are available to us still. So continue to follow along all season. Each and every weekday we're bringing you videos, so make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe turn those noties on so you can make sure you get those each and every morning when we're bringing them to you before these NBA slates this season. We do have a great tool on thelines.com called the Props Finder tool. You can use that to make sure you're getting the best odds available to you among all types of bets, even if it's some game lines in there. Those are all available on the Prop Finder tool page. So use that on thelines.com. Nate, should we just jump right into the first regular season win total over under bet that you're making for the 23-24 season?
Yes, we shall. The Atlanta Hawks over 41.5, which is only available at FanDuel. FanDuel seems to have a different market evaluation of the Hawks than other teams because there's actually a 5,000 difference for their title odds. They're 1,300, I think, when everyone else is 8,000. 13,000 versus 8,000. So, I mean, I'm not betting the Hawks to win the title, but let's not get sidetracked here. Let's not get crazy. I would consider plus 220 to win the Southeast, basically to beat out Miami in that regard. For me, this is mostly a vote of confidence in Quinn Snyder. This being year two, or really year one, he went 10-11, as very much just jumping on board in the middle of last season. And Quinn Snyder is one of the best coaches in the NBA. His resume speaks for itself. In his last six there in Utah, posted a 62% winning percentage. That was number one in the Western Conference. And the Western Conference was way better than the East. And his pace at Utah is the 18th best win percentage all time. It is a 48 win pace. I think the Hawks probably winning 45 games. I would not hate doing an alt here to go a couple more. And I think you'd really feel like that's smart money if they do finally swing this deal for Pascal Siakam. That's the hole on the roster, right? Is power forward with John Collins gone. We'll see if Jalen Johnson, AJ Griffin can break out either or. Both have shown a lot of promise when they've gotten some time here. But, I mean, really, we're talking about Trey and DeJounte Murray getting familiar in Quinn Snyder's system, him patching something together that is akin to Capella/Okongwu being Rudy Gobert at the back line, good efficiency on both ends of the floor, and taking care of what's the easiest schedule in the league based on last year's offensive efficiencies. I mean, the East is down. We know this a little bit, and the Hawks have a very easy schedule coming out here. They were just terrible defensively in the clutch last year. I think that will regress, but they continue to show good home road splits, which is why they finished 500 last year. And I mean, we're just talking about winning a couple more of these games with the talent they have against a lesser conference. I am fully on board with this as my first pick.
Yep, I love it. I've been on them as well since they started having these future bets and these markets come out for them. It definitely comes down to Quinn Snyder, who I've been familiar with since his days as the head coach of the University of Missouri, where he was awesome. And that's when they went to Elite Eights, was when he was there. Then he took a team with Rudy Gobert on it that is in the headline. The team he's on now, anyway, the Timberwolves, are in the headlines for not being able to figure out spacing with one of the best offensive big men apparently of all time in Cat and Rudy Gobert. Meanwhile, in Utah, they had one of the best offensive ratings in the league every year for like 4 straight years that they were going to the playoffs under Snyder with Rudy Gobert back there. So I think he's going to be able to do it with a full offseason and the rest of the last season like he got this year. He'll have all that time under his belt with this team. I love all that. I'll talk about them in the other video as well, where we talk about some other types of bets outside of just the regular season wins, because I think they're in a really good spot to exceed expectations for sure, at the very least. We'll talk about postseason at another time because there's no bets in there for me with them once we talk about the postseason yet. But my first pick is going to be really similar to last season. Maybe it's just a rinse repeat, even though it's gone up a bit. And that's the Sacramento Kings. And that was because last year it was at like 38.5, I think was their win total. You could still get some like 36.5 at one point when those came out. Right now for them, it's 44.5. and ththey're coming off a season where they won 48 games and they won the Pacific Division. Hashtag like the beam, hashtag beam team, because I think there's still a bit of disrespect there. And I think it comes down to we still treat them like the Kings. This is the Sacramento franchise that we still probably are a bit, and I say we, I just mean the general public, it's not really me, are still afraid to bet on a team like this and a franchise like this. And that's baked into the number, in my opinion, and why it hasn't even gone up that much since it came out. So I think they're a bit ahead of this pack of muck that is at 44.5 wins, which is like 6 different teams at this point are somewhere in that range of 44.5, 45.5 wins. And I think they're a bit above that. I think they're actually going to get better, even though, they didn't make much noise in the offseason. They're returning guys like Fox, Huerter, Monk, and Davion Mitchell, who are all 25 years old. Keegan Murray's 23. He's now the best Summer League player of all time. If you watched him at all, just dominate Summer League. And then even Sabonis is 27. I think Duarte was a nice pickup for some extra help as an athletic wing / guard, really, in any way, shape, or form that you need him. So I like the roster coming back the way it is, and I think the regular season try-heartedness needs to be a factor that we give the regular season rankings and projections that we give to certain teams. Those need to be included, because we talked about it sort of towards the end of last season when we were in the postseason, Nate, and we were saying, well, this is a different season now. It's the postseason. It's a 16-win season now. It's a much different structure, and different teams are able to thrive more now. Certain teams were sort of loafing around during the regular season, and so it's a different time. And during the regular season, like, I like the way that they just continue to sell out and be like, we're not really worried about protecting the rim. We're just going to score more points than you. It's okay that Domantas Sabonis is what we have back there. We're not too worried about it. We're even telling him not to get into foul trouble, which means the other teams are going to see a lot of layups and threes. But we're going to get more of them, hopefully, especially the way that we push the pace. I think there's nothing to dislike about that game plan moving forward. And if they're just going to rinse and repeat with that, I'm still going to take them over 48, even though obviously the Suns got better. And I want to acknowledge that and say that just because that they've got those 3 guys now, I'm still a little bit less confident that they're going to be putting forth as much effort and putting out their best guys night in and night out the way that the Kings do, more than most teams.
Yeah, and keeping those guys healthy, which I think is the one thing people point at, is that their injury luck can't hold up necessarily. I don't see why not. I mean, they're young guys and they seem to be durable, their core. But this number is baked in like some sort of like major regression, like they're going to lose out on 5 wins that they were lucky at down the stretch or in some way. And I don't think we can look at anything the Kings did as just being fluky. Yeah, they should win 45 games. I think the number is disrespectful, as you put it.
Thank you.
Let me take an under here. And it scares me because I respect the hell out of Ime Udoka. He takes over the Rockets here. But for the Rockets to win 32 games in this Western Conference seems like a long shot to me. Their roster, I mean, Fred VanVleet, also somebody I respect the hell out of, but how many games did Toronto win with FVV on it last year in a much better organizational situation? Not many more. Dylan Brooks, is he a positive? I mean, when you have guys like Jalen, Şengün, and Jabari Smith, who are maybe made to make a leap as like fantasy basketball prospects, and that's all well and good if you want to chase their production. But how are they going to be in the clutch? I don't think in their second, third years they're going to make a huge leap here. And last year, I mean, Houston had the worst offensive rating in the clutch, highest turnover rate by a long margin here, finished 25th in terms of clutch win percentage. They don't have a very easy schedule. They have no rest advantage games for 6 weeks to start out the season here. And 3 of their 5 rest advantage games on the season on the road. I just don't think there are any bad teams aside from Houston and Portland in this conference. And I, on paper, will take Portland's roster over Houston. Like, if they were to play right now and Portland hasn't traded any of those additional guys that they picked up, Portland has talent, has more talent than Houston. And that's how I feel. But, I mean, we're only talking about a couple head-to-head matchups there. In general, people should be able to pick on Houston like they did last year when they won 22.
Yeah, I think your overall point with Portland is that they're not even a cakewalk win for Houston the way that they might be for some other teams in the West. There's going to be some teams that get beat up. There's also going to be some teams like Dallas that are super dysfunctional that are going to get a lot of, losses that they shouldn't have given up, basically, because of not because they don't have more talent on the floor than a team like Houston, but because they're just walking dysfunction, essentially. So I would agree that someone in the West has to lose, basically. And I think the Rockets are a good bet for that. With regardless of Ime, like it's going to take a sec to ramp up. I don't love the additions that much. I respect Fred too, but how many wins is he worth considering what he does not bring on the defensive side of the ball? Dylan Brooks is a mind-boggling pickup to me when you're talking about a guy coming in like Ime who's not going to tolerate an ounce of shenanigans, and you bring in Mr. Shenanigans. What, he's going to teach them how to win? How much did he contribute to the Grizzlies winning? He played some nice defense at times. Like it's just not there for me for Dylan Brooks. I agree that once you get up above that 31 number like that, I'm down to take an under on them. Somebody has to lose, and depending on how much Wemby plays, I think the Spurs are going to be better than them. So we'll talk about that later. But I'm going to go to an under on the other side as well, Nate, which is the Miami Heat. And I hit this at 46.5, but the best number while we're recording right now is still 45.5. And there's some discrepancy there because at BetMGM, you get under 45.5 and it's still minus 105. If you take it on a number of other books, it's 43.5. So you're getting a good number here. It's basically saying they're going to win 2 more games than last season if they go over, when they won 44 last season. I don't believe in that. When you look at who played, like you could say, well, Jimmy and Bam and them didn't play. Bam played 75 games last season. Jimmy played 67. Hero played 67. It really was at the end of the season when Hero missed time, as we saw. And with Jimmy, he just, he picked his spots. And the Heat are just known for being, having some sort of hijinks with the lineup report, and that's really what leads to people just being like, how do you bet on this team? Does anybody ever play? And it's like, well, when they don't play people, they don't play like 6 of them, and it'll be a 5:45 announcement up for a 7 p.m. game. So yeah, not much you can do with that. But for this season, like, I think the losses are going to be a big deal. I think they did rely on 3-point shooting from random guys, which they were still last year, and Max Strus and Vincent, even Victor Oladipo, who helped at times, who's, by the way, on those Rockets now. So, like, I think without them moving forward, you look at what happens when they won last year versus when they lost. It was a noticeable two threes less a game that they would make on 4 to nearly 5% worse shooting from deep in those losses last season versus the wins, because of how much they rely on Jimmy to just go in and kick out and needing all the guys that are around him to be really good shooters. And now you talk about guys like Josh Richardson surrounding him. That ain't going to be it on offense, as much as that might be a nice addition on the defensive side of the ball with Richardson. Caleb Martin, like, let's still see what he is. We were all ready to give him like a 6-figure, however many figure contract, 9 figures, for him to re-sign with the Heat in the near future. Obviously, he still has 1 more year left on his deal, but like, just because he went off in the playoffs doesn't mean like we know what he is for an 82 game season at this point, when there's other guys out there playing. So maybe Haywood Highsmith is a nice surprise. My point is there's a lot more outs for them to go under versus needing things like Thomas Bryant plays out of his mind as your backup center, and Kevin Love still has something left to give you as maybe your other backup big, right? Like I'm just not buying it with this team this year. They're going to need a lot of games and a lot of production from Bam and Jimmy and Tyler that I don't think is worth 46 wins in the East.
I'm gonna pass because I don't want to play head games. That's why I'm not interested in Spurs. I'm not interested in Heat. When we talk about preseason win totals or anything like that, I will wait and see what kind of effort they're going to put into this. What kind of motivation they're going to derive from being sort of snubbed this offseason. I really have no idea what Jimmy Butler's going to do this season. I mean, he could sit out half the games. He could make an MVP push. It's completely up to him because they have not valued the regular season for years now, and kind of worked their way into some wins. But yeah, I just we'll see. I'm going to go with everybody's favorite Eastern Conference sleeper here, though. I know Josh was going to take it. It's the Pacers in the East. It's the Thunder in the West, the teams that are consensus on the rise here. Pacers, though, 38.5 wins, whereas the Thunder, you go up 6 more wins if you want to take them. And this has gained some steam. I think it opened at around 35.5, which is what they won last year. 35, including going 7-19 without Halliburton. They were an even 500 with him. They were over 500 in clutch games. They were 6th in threes, 6th in assists, and 1st in fast break points. beating older, slower teams, especially when they have a rest advantage. They went 10-6. They went 10-5 on 2+ days off. So it's the same kind of thing where you have, again, teams that are older or on the downswing. In the East, I would say Toronto, Chicago, Cleveland, Philly, Miami, Brooklyn, Washington, all in my mind are not as good as they were to start last season. I mean, Cleveland is more of a chemistry thing, but that's neither here nor there. Uh, but the Pacers are better. I mean, they improved defensively. I think Bruce Brown, Obi Toppin, we'll see what they have in the Rook, Jarris Walker, and Miles Turner being healthy. I think the defense will be better, which was obviously the biggest issue. And I think there's some positive regression to come when you look at teams shot 20, the second best at the free throw line against them. They shot the fifth best from three. Those are just variance things. And it's an easy schedule to start. So give these young guys some confidence. And I think they will start stringing wins together.
I think they already have a lot of confidence. I think they're less of a dark horse than they might have once been, but that's also just sort of like on Twitter. I don't know necessarily about in betting circles because, like you said, you can still get them 38.5. It opened at 36.5, I believe, for the Pacers, and I've been hitting it. I've got them 40 plus wins as well for plus 240. I think I sprinkled a little bit, on plus on them to get 45 plus wins, just getting a little wild with it because I also just think the East is down so much that it's ripe for a team like the Pacers or like the New York Knickerbockers to overtake, at least like not having to play in the play-in, right? Top 6 seed for both of those teams this year. Like I think that's reasonable. Jarris Walker is really good, by the way. Saw him play in summer league and then continue to watch him. And his defense is definitely going to be something they value. He's incredibly quick for someone who's like 6'7", like 225. He's a massive human being. And he really looks like a linebacker. So I really like everything they have. Bruce Brown is just such an awesome addition for them. And that's why they're going to be a top 3 league pass team, no matter how you cut this, because of the fact that they're playing with Tyrese and Bruce out in the as well as Obi out in transition and in space. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think they're going to be a little bit better on defense with those guys that I just mentioned coming in as well, and replacing some of the minutes that you had a lot of cupcakes coming in last year. Not even mentioning Benny Matz and Nesmith as well coming in for those two. Or I'm sorry, not Nesmith, Nembhard at guard. So yeah, I love this team, as you well know. So I'm glad you got to talk about them. I'm hitting them in a lot of ways, as you know. I'm going to move on to my last pick and just go under for the Mavs because I can get them at 45.5. It's a similar scenario with the Heat where there's a couple game difference between where I'm getting this on BetMGM at minus 120 at 45.5, and there's a lot of 43.5s for the Mavs out there right now on a lot of books. So just dysfunction, like you say, you don't want to play head games, and like that's fine. I guess the Heat could come out and try. I still am not worried about that roster, even if it does try, is kind of what I'm saying. I think they're just going to run into a bunch of teams that are capable of playing with them in the regular season when you can play a lot more free and loose, and you and your top guys are only getting 32 minutes and not 40. That said, with the Mavs, like, what even is this roster? I don't even know what to do with it. There's still like some semblance of like when they would play 3-and-D and just have a bunch of guys like DFS and Reggie Bullock around Luka to make up for all of his inefficiencies on defense. And then they'd have rim runners who could bang in the post, like at least JaVale McGee or someone to that effect. And now they're starting Derek Lively, who averaged 6 points at Duke and does not move his feet well enough, I don't think, to just handle his own in the post with other bigs who are just going to eat him alive in the West with how much talent there is at the center position, and at least, power forward, if you will. Like, obviously, all the things that could go wrong with Kyrie are in play. Grant Williams getting punched in the face at practice also in play. That, like, you know what I mean? There's all that type of weird stuff that could go on with this team right now. Maxi Kleba's older, Powell's older, and if you're going to rely on them to also be able to continue to get out on the wing and guard that while also getting back and having to guard against bigs because they're also your backup bigs, like, good luck with that. You're inserting Josh Green and more Jaden Hardy, which means you're just getting less defense when you've got Kyrie and Luka as your backcourt with Tim Hardaway still on the roster for some reason. Like, maybe he's your defensive guy that comes in and helps out when it's Kyrie and Luka. Just not the guy I want guarding my team's the other team's best player for my team. They had the 25th rated defensive rating last year, and I just think they got worse on defense is my main point. So if they would sell out completely and be like whatever to the center position, like maybe Grant Williams is our center or somebody a little bit taller but is still spry, right? Like come in and be their fine. Like maybe that's their play, right? You come in and have someone that is just really long and can jump high, and now you're just an offensive team with 125 offensive rating and 122 defensive rating. Maybe that's how you try to win for them. But all that chemistry with Jay Kidd as your leader, which I think we can go back to somewhat mocking him, especially with what he's going to have on his hands this season. I don't think they're getting to 46 wins in the West.
Yeah, this is an easy call. I think that the only way you take over 45 and a half wins is if you just parlay that with Luka to be the MVP. Like there's no other way Dallas is going to win this many games unless
Right.
Luka is just healthy and absolutely dominating, and Kyrie is bought in as a Robin to his Batman, and the other guys just get in where they fit in. But there are a lot of ways that this goes wrong. And like we've been saying, yeah, not a lot of room for leeway in the Western Conference, as they found out down the stretch last year.
And that's what would even determine. I get what you're saying in a somewhat joking manner, where you're saying like the correlation between what it would take for this team to go over and do well is Luka just being otherworldly. Then a couple sentences later, you were like, and Kyrie accepts the fact that he's Robin to the Batman, and that's really just the sitting ticking time bomb that could explode at any moment. It could be a dud. Maybe he did figure something out, and he's going to be more zen this season. That's not what I would bank on. I think 46 gives you some breathing room where, like, I see their ceiling, even if things go mildly wrong and not totally wrong, still see their ceiling under 46 wins in this one. So that's all the time we have for you in the first video back here with our regular season win total over unders. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also have the other best bets with some futures for you guys as we gear up for the tip-off of this regular season in the NBA. So until we talk to you next, happy betting.